articles. Number one, on media protection. Second is what is the state's responsibility in curbing and answering these particular issues. And next is the issue of media maximization. We both believe that these end goals are actually achieved in our paradigm. Two levels of discussion, Mr. Chair. Number one is at the principle level, of the idea of a specialized case of media as to why they should be delegated so as an extension of self-defense from those normal individuals, and how they are more vulnerable to the lack of self-action at that. And second is the idea of the practical level, of the idea of the thicker and stronger state protection to the media man, and how is this more actualized in our paradigm. First, on the principle level, we need to ask this question: when does the state use the same extension of principle of self-defense? We want to talk about security guards at that, Mr. Chair. They are allowed to carry guns and station in front of those banks, to increase the security of that banks, Mr. Chair. And they're only going to shoot if threat is present as a form of self-defense. If particular robbers will try to shoot them in order for the robbers to get them back, they're allowed to shoot. But they're not allowed to shoot anyone at that, Mr. Chair. And the bankers are not allowed to go to the banks because of their presence. So we say that those harms will not actually happen. The harms of the media will not actually happen in our paradigm. But later on, Mr. Chair, we want to still nuance it to the issue of the media man and to the idea of eminent and elevated harm, and the more tendency of state failure present that should be answered by the government. The discussion coming from the government, for the opposition, for the government side is this: on the first level, we believe that media men cannot get viable, important information and cannot fulfill the responsibility of gathering information if they will not take those risks. That we say that there is no value of media if we are just going to search Yahoo at that, Mr. Chair. If they're just going to search BBC News at that, Mr. Chair. We say that they need to go to those particular MILF camps. We say that they need to go in front of those violent mass demonstrations. They need to go as near to those buses during the particular recent incident, Mr. Chair. That's why the harm is existent on their particular duty. And this is the need for the action of the government. But on the second level, we want to argue because they say that they still want to protect media at that. But then at their duty, they're actually saying that if they bring media, then it will actually destroy the image of media. But we say, Mr. Chair, coming from the Deputy Prime Minister, on the second level, that media already has inherently threat. That media men are already shot in front of their homes while they are drinking coffee, while they are washing their cars, while they are in Jollibee eating, Mr. Chair. And this currently happened, Mr. Chair. This currently happened, Mr. Chair, at that. So the harm is not only present when they cover news, but even after, Mr. Chair, the threat is already there. It's not only part of their work, but it's already inherently there, Mr. Chair, even if they're not doing their work. So we say that the elevated threat is very much present. So the question in this debate, is the threat or harm large enough for the state to extend the rights to self-defense and specialize on media allowing them to carry arms? We prove, Mr. Chair, that we say yes as well. We successfully proved that in this debate. But then again, they say that this shouldn't be the case. They say that media is a crucial institution. We say yes to that. But then again, the neutrality and the image of the media is more important than security. Mr. Chair, we say that neutrality and image, the preservation of image can still happen in our paradigm. They never listen to the Prime Minister at that, Mr. Chair. From the onset of this debate, we already argued that even if in neutrality and the image protection, Mr. Chair, will be magic that, number one, neutrality can still happen in our paradigm. But number two, Mr. Chair, even if magically it will disappear, Mr. Chair, that neutrality will not be there. We say that the media are still accountable. There are already counter mechanisms in the status quo that address this need. Talk about the conduct of war, and talk about how humanitarian aids are allowed to use violence in times of threat as a form of self-defense. media men will still be accountable to that particular counter mechanism. So they don't have much to be afraid of neutrality at that, because that's already addressed in the status quo. There are counter mechanisms for that particular issue. Next is the idea that they're worried about threat, Mr. Chair. But we say that threat is not only present when they go to those particular duty. We say that the threat is always present. It's always a part of their job, Mr. Chair. The threat issues are already there. And no response coming from the government, which we believe that this should be responded from the government, Mr. Chair, on how will threat always, on how the security threat and how the lack and the presence of state failure should be diminished by the act of allowing media men to carry guns, Mr. Chair. And we say this is so very special to the media men because the threat is always present. On the next level, I want to talk about the practical level, on the idea of the thicker and stronger state protection to the media men. We actually discussed on this side how this is more actualized in our paradigm. Because we talk about the deterrence by mutual fear, Mr. Chair, that if I shoot you, you might shoot me. It's not about media men. It's not about media men always shooting, always have the tendency to shoot those particular terrorists. We say, Mr. Chair, that on our paradigm, we are actually advocating deterrence by mutual fear. And in the times of actual harm, we are actually allowing media men to be protected at that, Mr. Chair. Those are the thicker mechanisms that are present in our paradigm. But what is their response? They say that the media should be a neutral identity. We say, Mr. Chair, that neutrality can still be preserved because they are still liable to the current stringent mechanisms created by government in the neutral parts of war, in the neutral elements of war, Mr. Chair. Talk about humanitarian people at that, Mr. Chair. We believe that on their case, on how it diminishes neutrality, we believe that it's not much of an issue in this debate because it's just an offshoot of their proposal and a very much great assumption at that. And sadly, that's the only thing that comes from this side of the House, Mr. Chair. Because in the real world, neutrality cannot be erased. Because with media men having guns, terrorists, because in the status quo, terrorists are negotiating to individuals who have guns, Mr. Chair. Because they believe that these individuals will be still liable to the government and stringent mechanisms at that. If their problem is that terrorists will not know about neutrality, Mr. Chair, we say we can't let them know that these people are neutral. These people are there just to be news. Because that's the only solution and that's the only problem that they presented in this paradigm. At the end of the day, we believe that the media should, the idea of self-defense should be extended to the media men by allowing them to carry arms. That's why we believe that the motion should fly. Thank you.